Redditors, what's the most metal thing you've ever seen? There was an article about a rapist who threw gasoline on his victim and proceeded to light her up in an effort to shut her up for good. She dragged him into the flames to burn with her. Also metal is the case of a mother whose daughter rapist was freed from jail and lived in the same town and keep telling her, "I will rape your daughter again." The mother proceeds to the gas station, buys some gas and poured it on the man and set him on fire. I think she was just convited to do community work. My boss drilled into his hand when a bit slipped. Got his knife out. Picked the filings of steel that got into his hand. Got the alcohol and poured it over. Slapped crazy glue to close the gap and drove to the hospital. The crazy part is that his face never changed. No emotion at all. When I was 12 I was pitching hay for the cows. Due to a freak accident I ended up with a pitchfork through my foot. I pulled it out and crawled to the house covered in blood. When my dad saw me in a mess, the first thing he said to me with a frustrated sigh was, "Eat your dinner, then we are going to the hospital." Goddamn, not even a plate to go? We were a fairly traditional conservative Christian household. Like, my folks were just sitting at the table waiting for me to come back from feeding the cows so that we could pray as a family, then eat. Also, to be fair, the nearest hospital was close to an hour away and it's not like we took our time with dinner. I do remember not being able to keep it together while we were praying, though it does all seem a little silly in hindsight. I didn't witness it directly, but it absolutely qualifies. A few months back my friend noticed his 18-year-old cat seemed sick, just really lethargic, and seemed to have a small wound bump on his tail. He kept an eye on him for a day or two, seeing if he was going to have to take him into the vet. 2 days later, the cat buffs up a dead black widow spider, and legitimately went back to normal after and cleaned his tail wound himself and it healed. Didn't see this firsthand, but my dad's friend told us about one time when his dog chased a bear up a tree. In a dog versus bear fight, the bear would win every time, but they tend to be pretty timid, so this dog treed it. The guy calls his dog back into the house, but before leaving, the dog pees on the tree with the bear in it. Super ballsy on the dog's part. At the time I was a CT tech at a major trauma hospital. Patient comes with gunshot wound to forehead, self-inflicted, with a .22 caliber. They were alert and orientated and following directions but kept trying to put their finger in the hole. They were surprised there was a hole in their forehead. There was this crazy dude that hung around my apartments in the mid-90s who broke into my neighbor's apartment one night when they weren't home and tried to kill himself with a .22. He shot himself from under the jaw and completely missed his brain, but I guess in his delirium he started to spread his blood all over their walls and pretty much anything he could get his hands on. When my neighbors got home and found him, and what he'd done to their apartment, instead of calling 911 immediately they beat the s out of him some more. Crazy, but he survived, and continued to hang around my complex trying to bum money or cigarettes off everyone the remainder of the time I lived there. I worked at a music venue downtown in my city. Every Saturday was a mix of punk rockers and metalheads who came down for 80s night. This disheveled dude stumbled in and walks up to the bar. He, long greasy hair, a bloodied busted lip with 2 matching black eyes, reeking of whiskey and a bad attitude. Me, 6 hours into a PBR drinker's shift with a tip bucket full of change and the occasional dollar. He orders a PBR, and hands me a $10. I give him a $5 and 2 singles. I go to turn to the cooler to grab his drink and he yells something along the lines of, "Where's the rest of my F money?" I snap back, tell him he gave me a $10, and turned the till to show him the empty $20 spot. We didn't keep large dollars in the register, because we dealt in pocket change for $3 tall boys and $5 40s. As I go to grab the register and turn it back towards myself, ignoring his demand for money, I feel the damn thing slip between my fingers as I watch this fool lift it over his head. I hear people yelling as they realize what's about to happen, while I drop behind the bar in hopes he doesn't bash my brains. In a matter of seconds, I hear the most animalistic growl and heave as I watch him toss the register over my head, flying right into the glass bar. This was the mother of all oddly satisfying sounds, a giant bar mirror with 6 glass shelves, 50+ glass bottles of liquor and assorted beer breaking into bits and raining down all around me. In the darkness, the neon lights shining through the glass mimicking sparklers shooting out of the wall where an entire busted a moment earlier. It all happened in minute, feeling like an eternity. Then it all ended swiftly as the bouncers moved in, picking this guy up over their heads, throw him down 2 staircases, toss him out the door and beat the F out of him. It was just another Cincinnati Saturday night. Cincinnati, it ain't glamorous but goddamn does it got personality. Old lady I used to take care of, she was an aircraft mechanic in her youth during WW2. She fought me tooth and nail every time I went in to help her. One day in the dining room she fell out of her wheelchair and busted her head wide open. She was 95. Blood everywhere. This lady stands up, blood running down her face. We rushed to help her. She looked me dead in the face and said F off, I don't need any help. We called an ambulance. My grandma, 70 years old at the time, messed up her elbow one day doing something in the yard. She comes up to me, I'm like 9 at this point, and she casually says call your mom with her arm dangling awkwardly at the elbow. I freaked the hell out. She fixed herself at E while we waited for my mom, reassuring me the whole time. She passed in January just one day shy of her 90th. Badass. When my grandma fell and broke her hip she kind of propped herself up against the sofa for an hour or so till my mom came home for dinner. My grandma told her, I have to go to the hospital, but I am very hungry. Why don't you fix me supper first? So that's what they did, and grandma lived another 30 years, and she never stopped being rigid about meals and coffee breaks. Turning off the highway onto a road that leads into a small country town, there was a deer carcass rotting underneath the sun that was likely the result of a vehicle hit. Feasting on the corpse was a bald eagle, with its beak stained red from his free meal. I slowed down to observe, and he spread his wings out as if to show his dominance. Once in a lifetime sight. Me and a buddy of mine were mid-crowd at a Dragon Force show in 2005. We were helping people get up for crowd surfing, and it had been about 15 minutes at this point. My friend looks at me and says, well, I gotta go, it's my turn now, and without even saying anything, he makes a Superman pose and the guy's right in front of us. Without saying anything, just boost him up and he is passed to the front in that pose. Hilarious. Another time, Bill Kelleher of Mastodon was flicking his pics into the crowd at the end of a show and one hit me in the eye and got stuck. That's how I earned one of my concert pics. When I was younger, maybe 16, this young kid walks up to me all angry, slapped my smoothie to the ground and walks away. No words, just eye contact and a man on a mission. I'll find you one of these days, Austin. Austin is in Texas. Jesus, dude. Snitches get stitches. I knew a guy who was born without the web under his tongue. He could do the kiss thing. Only he worked with kids. So his stupid human trick was to stick his tongue way out and then shove it up his nose. As a teenager I thought it was hilarious. As an adult, looking back, I still think it was hilarious. My mother dearest always had lots of problem with her inside baby making parts. She has had a lot of surgeries done to the point where all her stomach area is numb. I guess the apple does not fall far from the tree. Guess who started having the same problems? Me. However, mine took a step further. I had an unsuspecting cyst growing in my ovary. Didn't feel a thing until it started trying to tear out of the ovary. 5 pounds. Excruciating pain, ambulance and amp, a long emergency surgery, had to have the ovary taken out. Was knocked out for 2 days. Third day, gained consciousness. After about 10 days, I got to start walking so that the stitches settle and all that jazz. So they bring 2 nurses and a walker when I'm ready and I'm like WTF? I can walk. I don't need support to walk. They help me sit up on the edge of the bed and guys. As soon as my feet touched the ground and amp, I tried to stand. This pain that was out of this universe shot through me and knocked me unconscious on the spot. Woke up 30 minutes later. Doc said they had legit cut open and stitched back together my body inside and out and I can just put pressure on it. However, since I was young, I should be able to slowly start walking in about 3 weeks and return to usual activity in about 3-4 months if everything heals properly. So the reason I'm telling you this is because at that moment I remembered the countless number of surgeries of this type, and some even more extensive my mother had. Every single one of them scheduled on a Friday. She'd be back at the house on Sunday. On Monday, she was up at dawn to make me and my sister food and lunch for school and dinner. She would wince, but I never understood why until that moment. She was back on her feet and resumed taking care of her family on Monday with tubes and shit hooked and attached to her. I never understood or comprehended the kind of pain and intensity of it that she went through. Took me a year almost to be able to jog without the scar throbbing, and this woman defied all pain to make sure her children were taken care of. There is nothing more metal than my mother.